Hello and namaste. Welcome to the Almost Daily ZenCast. I'm your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. I humbly thank you for tuning in. Welcome, friends. Today is now. There is only now. So thanks for spending now listening to this. What is the real problem? Oh, first and foremost, that's today's topic, but before we get into that, I want to mark a special moment. If you're a very engaged listener, you've already heard this, because earlier today I put out an episode of Good Morning Trumptopia, and I mentioned this in that. But for anyone who's only listening to this particular segment, or who's just joining us now, because ZenCast appealed to them, I wanted to commemorate a special moment, and that's that as of today, all four of my primary podcast projects, they're all interrelated, of course, but all four of them are now going to be available on iTunes and any of the podcast players that pull the RSS feed from iTunes, as well as Google Play. So, hopefully, relatively soon, a new array of audience members on both Apple and whatever it's called. Apple and Google-based devices will be able to tune in. If you're new to the show, I humbly welcome you. If you're an existing listener that's been listening along for some time now, thank you for tuning back in. And for everybody, I apologize if at any time I get redundant. A word on redundancy. The human being, according to marketing analysts, specialists throughout the era of marketing, because that's a very distinct era in human history. There was a time where we didn't really have marketing, and then we invented marketing. So marketing research indicates that a human individual needs to be exposed to an image, concept, idea, or notion a minimum of 7 times before they'll begin to wrap their brains around it and try to sort out for themselves what their opinion is. Obviously, that's not always true, because sometimes we're keenly aware. For those wondering, this is not a scripted podcast show with an arc. This is sort of more like a daily radio show that's meant to be a talk. All the segments that I create are meant to be more like talk show format. Tragically, at this time, as I mentioned recently, as I mentioned almost every episode, I have not connected with collaborators that are down. I mean, I've got some fans out there that are supporting, but I haven't met any collaborators yet. So if you have been interested in developing a podcast that might be up the same alley as the podcast I'm producing, hit me up. Actually, I very recently reconnected with an old work acquaintance, and he's invited me to be a guest on his podcast, which I have made a commitment to binge on really soon. So I'll be promoting, kind of sidekick promoting, and maybe even featuring some quotes from a podcast created by an acquaintance of mine. That is, the podcast title is called, I think, I don't have it right in front of me. I think it's called Welcome the Void or Accepting the Void or something like that. But it's about the void. And I'm not sure if they are as mystic and hippie new age woo-woo as I am, but I'm very intrigued. At any rate, today's episode of the Almost Daily ZenCast, what is the real problem? That's a big question. And it's a question that has almost as many answers as there are people arguing over ideological constructs. You'll notice that people bound up with an ideological construct, let's just pick one at random and say the extreme right here in America, they'll point to the opposition as the problem. Let's take a Trumptopia example. The Republicans and the Trumptopia fans, the hardcore ones, the majority of them seem to point fingers at what they're calling the deep state, as if the right wing of the government. The wing implies that it is an integral part of whatever else is attached to that wing. You know what I mean? Forgive me, I'm still working off a cough. That's how that brainwashing works. We're righteous, you're the problem. Is that brainwashing modality the root of the problem? No. That's just one of the oldest, most well-established tools of societal oppression and mind control that none of us escaped being bombarded by during our upbringing, rather. No one likes to be told that they are brainwashed, right? Especially not the most heavily brainwashed of the brainwashed. But let us be clear. Everyone has suffered the abuse of brainwashing. It cannot be avoided. The moment we're born, the societal structures and norms that operate on everyone around us get broadcast at our consciousness, get demonstrated for our avatar to absorb. The real problem at the core of this clusterfuck we call postmodern society is not any one ideological construct or another. It is not any one bad guy or another. It is not any one conspiracy theory or conspiracy group or another. The problem is not the Illuminati, folks. Although, yes, for everyone who's already sort of stepped away from statism, they certainly look like the biggest boogeyman on the stage. The problem is deeper than that. It's older than that. And obviously, I may be playing the suspense out a bit much, dragging it across 2 episodes in different podcast series. I started talking about this in this morning's episode of Good Morning Trumptopia. This morning, I started recording at noon, or whatever. The problem is, and I hate to sound reductionist, and I hate to sound like a hippie new age woo nut job, the problem is that we have indoctrinated ourselves, because we blame society, but we are society, folks. And especially once you zoom back to the place I'm coming from, you realize that no matter how innocent you feel, you cannot escape your involvement in this. We, as a species, have indoctrinated ourselves into an addiction to our ego. Even the kindest, even the most benign, even the sweetest person on the planet that you know is subconsciously operating from a base level addiction to ego. Even myself. We all struggle with it. We all try to be the best human being we can be. And I'm not saying this to disparage anyone. What I am trying to do is point out that the playing field is much more level than we give it credit. What does that mean? Well, if you step out of the statist sheeple box that we are incubated in, and you realize that that's a box and it's there to control you, then you can agree that there's a lot of issues going on in the world, that we can perceive that need to be addressed. I'm not the first person to bring a call to action about any of this. And if we have a revolution in this country, it won't be the first revolution in this country. It won't be the first revolution on the planet. Why do we keep having revolutions, though? Because the ego is just fine. The ego does not care about our fight for freedom, our fight for rights, our fight for equality. And yet the ego is intrinsic to each and every one of us. One of the things that our own totally normalized cultural conditioning blinds us to is that our ego is not working for our best interests. We over-identify with ego to the point of defending it. Now, what do we do about it if that is all correct? And I'm not here to demand your faith or your belief. I'm inviting you to go check it out. How do you find out if your ego is your problem? Well, broken record time. Sit down, shut up, and meditate. Sorry, I don't mean to make that sound aggressive. It's just that this has been the same problem for millennia. This has been the same division or boundary of those who cling to the problem's oppression and those who have achieved some level of realization and want to encourage or inspire all of us to start working towards our individual and species-wide self-liberation from mind. This is an age-old problem. I mean, it's such an ancient problem that, as I've pointed out before, it's in the Bible. Be still and know. What do you think that means? In postmodern terms, it translates pretty nicely into shut up and meditate. What is meditation? A lot of people are intimidated by that concept. They think that they can't do it. They think that their mind is too frazzled, that they can't achieve it. Meditation is not an ideology. Meditation is not a concept. It is not a belief. It is not dogma. I'll admit that it is very easy to quickly devolve into dogma or ideology about meditation. I'm well aware of that. But at its core, meditation is not those things. At its core, at its center, at its actual event, meditation is the internal phenomenological experiencing of one's true nature vis-a-vis the gentle abdication or self-liberation from the ideological constructs that have been cobbled together to construct our postmodern mind identity. That can all sound like meaningless nonsense to a lot of people I know. I get told that all the time. I've been on this jam for a really, really long time. And I'm not claiming to have achieved anything. I'm not perfect. I'm not enlightened. I still struggle with my meditation. I struggle with it as a practice. I struggle with it as a reality. I doubt it all the time. Simultaneously, I have had enough personal phenomenological experience to say, wow, something here connects the dots. And it is verifiable, personable. It's personally verifiable and repeatable. Doubt gets in the way. And that's a lesson I had to learn to verify for myself. That yes, indeed, doubt blocks your connection to the indescribable phenomena that occurs within you of self-liberation from your own mind. I was commenting on someone's post because I felt that while they were an acquaintance on Facebook and they self-identify as sort of spiritual as opposed to religious, which puts us all in danger of feeling that we are enlightened or awake. And I'm saying we can't fall for that pit trap. I am not awake. You are not awake. Together, we are awakening. Let me unpack that. Anyone who's busy patting themselves on the back for having achieved something that is not achievable in this state is fooling themselves and falling for an ego trap. Enlightenment is a process with a duration at such a large scale that it is hard to comprehend. It is a species-wide cumulative process. It is not about you as an individual, although it begins with you as an individual. It cannot be achieved without you engaging in it as an individual, but it is not about you. It's not about you being special. It's not about me being special. It's not about Jesus being special. It's not about Buddha being special. It's not about Muhammad being special. It's not about Allah being special. Oh, sorry, Allah is a name for God, not a name for a prophet. And I hope everybody who's clinging to a statist, profiteering hijacked religion got a little bit offended there and wants to engage. Not the offended, oh, I'm walk away and never listen to this, but whoa, what's he talking about? I'm going to get on that. If you're new, let me tell you something that I know historically can be verified. All of the world's religious organizations have been hijacked by the same people who are profiteering on the conflict that is generated by all these false dichotomous divisions of ideological bullshit. You can see it in the way we talk about this fight for terrorism, which is the most ridiculous thing. But they often, the talking heads on all sides of the echo chambers, will discuss about it. It's a war on ideology. It's a war on that ideology, because that ideology is bad. And depending on which news outlet, they're using that general sentiment to either inculcate all of Islam, which is not, I don't agree with. I don't think that all of Islam is guilty, but they're using it to sort of drive whatever their particular ideological point is. You see, either all of Islam is bad, or this particular ideological flavor, which we don't really know where it came from, of Islam is evil and we need to fight it. And I've said this before, you can't fight for freedom. You can't fight to liberate someone else. Let me extend that, because I went off on this jag in Good Morning Trumptopia. Okay, fighting for freedom is like fucking for virginity. Now, you can insert fighting to liberate someone else from an evil ideology is very much like fucking for virginity. You cannot liberate another person from the ideology that they cling to. The only thing you can do practically, if you're going externally that way, if you're fixated on looking out instead of within, the only thing you could do is kill that person because you don't approve of their ideology. And guess what, folks? That's what they want. Not the Muslims, not the Christians, not the Jews. And I know there's a lot of blame laying at the Jews, those evil Zionist Jews. I even hate saying the phrase, because then I'm either automatically labeled as a hate monger and an anti-Semitist, which I'm not. The only things I am against are ideologies. I'm not against people. People are people. No one is a Jew, folks. Being Jewish is an ideological construct. It is not a reality that is organic and true in nature. No one is a Christian. Jesus wasn't a Christian, and that's a hardcore freaking fact. The ideological construct that Jesus was raised in and that he was adhering to until he rebelled was Judaism. Jesus was a Jew. And even he wasn't a Jew, because he's one of the examples of enlightenment as a process. But none of us, you are not your body, you are not your mind, you are not the ideological constructs that you've been tricked into believing in. And I can prove it to you. Not because I'm special, but because you are a human being, not an ideology. And I can show you how to experience your humanity. And I have no special knowledge other than I've reviewed history and went, wow, there's definitely two big camps in the history of ideas. The camp of some idea will be eventually the best idea, and that idea has to destroy all other ideas. That's the camp of ideological constructs. And then there's the other camp of people who understand that we need to reconnect with nature, and the most direct way to reconnect with our true nature, both as an individual body and as a participant in the entire cosmos, is to abandon all blindering, self-limiting, filtering ideological constructs that prevent us from perceiving ourselves clearly. That's the problem. That's the nexus of the problem. Why are we still struggling with this problem if we've had literally hundreds, if not thousands of individuals throughout history stand up and go, whoa, 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 folks, I think we're doing this wrong. Maybe we should try love, peace, grooviness, and meditation. I've pointed this out before, and then I'll point it out again. For you, new listener, old listener, whoever's listening, to go look this up yourself. From Mithra to Buddha and Jesus to thousands of names that we don't remember, including, what's that other one that's really cool? Not ISIS. And I don't mean ISIS, the terrorist group, but Isis, the Egyptian god. There's a really long list. And I don't have it in front of me. That's one of those research things that I've done already, and I don't have like a nice printout, which I should probably create for myself so that the next time this subject comes up, I can actually read the list. I'm going to write that note down. Oh, I have that. Oh, you know what? I made that note for another one, and I still didn't pull up lists. Anyways, there's been hundreds, if not thousands of people, men and women, mind you. We've only been told about some of the men, and I'll explain why in a minute. But there's been hundreds, if not thousands of people over the millennia, every couple generations or so, every couple hundred generations, that stop, stand up, and say, the fuck are we doing? And all those people, arguably, as one collection of theories it suggests, all those people were just human beings who, to some degree or another, achieved the liberation of their body self from mental ideological constructs, and then in doing so allowed themselves to perceive their own true nature more clearly. None of this is new. Why am I doing a podcast show about it when there's plenty of other podcast shows talking about enlightenment and meditation and, elevating your frequency? And these are all tropisms that are kind of tired, in fact. Why am I doing this? Why am I talking about Trumptopia and America and the problems that we face in postmodern society? Because the problem is simple and it's annoying as fuck. And I, for one, am sick and tired of watching humanity keep itself stuck on this merry-go-round meat grinder of death and destruction. Do I think that there's some sort of utopia on the other side of meditating? It doesn't happen in 5 minutes now. There's no quick fix. Am I peddling a utopic nonsense kind of theory? I don't think so. Because there's real, genuine, undeniable consequences or results that are engendered by the human body when it meditates. As I've said in previous episodes, what I'm trying to do is bring my voice to the chorus of voices that are advocating that we investigate this. Because I've surveyed the landscape of spiritual literature out there, and one of the sad, tragic things is a lot of it's highly commercialized. And there's already critics of this movement, critics of the spiritual movement from within the spiritual movement. And there's a woman I really want to interview whose name totally escapes me right now because I just triggered the thought of her, what the general gist of her posts are. I got to look her up, and she's already said that she would be honored to be interviewed, but I haven't done the follow through to actually schedule something. And then sometimes she and I disagree about stuff, and then she gets a little bit testy with me, and that's fine. Spirituality, spiritualism, transcendentalism, Buddhism. If it's an ism, then you're getting carried away on the wrong boat. You're betting on the wrong horse. If it's a real ism, there's a saying, even an ancient saying, because this is not new. This has already happened. This has happened before, and it'll probably happen again until we really, really, really wake up. But that's that Buddhism, some forms of Buddhism, became isms. And so some Buddhist within that system of Buddhist isms woke up and said, hey guys, I think we're falling for the trap of eating the menu instead of ordering the food. That's a really sophisticated analogy or symbol for what we as human beings have been doing to ourselves for a really long time. We are all caught up in it because we are all literally one. Yes, we have different bodies, just like a branch of a tree will have different leaves, but all of those leaves belong to that branch which belongs to that tree and is inseparable. All those things are inseparable from each other. We may be able to walk around, I say this all the time, we may be able to walk around, go from here to there, but separate us from the closed system that we call Mother Earth, and without a whole bunch of artificial boundaries to sort of keep a little bubble of Mother Earth around us, we will die. We will cease to be alive. We will cease, therefore, to exist. We are inseparable from the cosmos. The cosmos is inseparable from itself. The cosmos, i.e. the planet Earth, it is not a place. And it is not a computer program. Although it has a lot of technical similarities to computer programs because our minds were reflecting nature when we invented computers, not the other way around. I think the whole the universe is a video game like The Sims idea is cute and marketable, but it's not accurate. It's just another ism that's distracting us from the truth. The truth, like the cosmos itself, exists beyond our comprehension. The truth is too big for alphanumeric symbolic systems of representation. Therefore, I cannot tell you the whole truth. I can tell you bits and pieces of it. And I can point you, just like anybody else who's had similar experiences as I, because I'm not special. This is your birthright, not mine. This is our birthright as a collective whole. But anyone who's had a little bit of experience with this can point anyone else in the direction of self-discovery and self-liberation. No one can discover you for you. No one can liberate you from yourself besides you. Because we do indeed achieve this sort of deep acceptance of the illusion of separation. we will be able to do really intense things together beyond the illusion of separation only when we all comprehend and integrate into our existence the phenomenological understanding that it is indeed an illusion and nothing to invest our belief power in. I was talking about this off the airwaves on Facebook with someone. They said something along the lines of, I'm sorry I don't have it pulled up. I should have. I didn't know I was going to want to talk about it. But a Facebook friend of mine today posted, beliefs today are mostly about self-limitation or perpetuating one's own bias, essentially. That's what echo chamber systems are. They take people's energy beliefs and they bounce it around really hard so that you keep reinforcing the same belief mechanism. Now, here's the tricky thing that I think is really important that we need to have deeper understanding on. Belief is a tool. It's an energy tool. It's not a thing. It's an energy tool. And belief should not, it often is, it should not be confused, merged, or conflated with the ideology that is being believed in. This happens all the time in religion, which is why we're accustomed to conflating and just blurring those lines when we talk about it, even if we aren't religious. It's that normalized in our culture. Belief is an energy tool. So choose what you believe in carefully. Now here's the thing. Belief is an energy tool that is like second tier in terms of cosmic phenomena. It's not a primary thing. Direct, personal, phenomenological knowing is a higher order tool than belief. Belief is nice. It's dandy. I love it when people believe in me. I love it when I believe in myself, which I struggle with, right? We all do. But we have been led to misunderstand what belief is. Depending on which source you look it up in, the origins of the word belief actually derived from a slightly differently spelled word, which meant to be loving that person. Belief is more closely related to beloved and to love than it is to any other word that means I agree with you or I accept what you're saying. And like I said, belief should not be conflated with the ideologies that we believe in. That's what keeps us blind to the negative impacts of the ideologies that we believe in. Why is ego the problem? What is ego? Why is it here, and why is it such an asshole? Everything I talk about on these shows, by the way, is what I call, or rather, is my own spin or my own reinterpreting and sort of trying to integrate various theories about mystic stuff, right? And with all due respect, I have invested plenty of time in investigating religious ideological constructs to determine whether or not there's any gems of deep value to be found there. And my shocking statement to you is yes, there are. To this day, despite the corruption, despite the hijacking by the war profiteers, despite the ignorance and the way that the text of all the three major religions and of all the other sort of less major religions has been misinterpreted and or directly fucked with, editing-wise, the Bible being the one that's been the most fucked with, in my opinion. Despite all that, there are still deep, profound gems of spiritual wisdom to be found there. Because ultimately, any one of us can be a mouthpiece for the divine. And we have so done in the past to try to wake everyone else up around us to that fact. So, I'm not I'm not like a history buff that can point to you with clear annotated citations that I've memorized to all the historical sources. And so, because I got a lot of flack for that, I've put together a very short list of books. Mind you, it's very short. Of books that have informed my assessment of this, meta theory. It's not even my theory. I'm just adding to it. If you want to go through that list and get into some of those books, it's on Facebook. It's in my notes section. Anybody remember the notes section on Facebook? Still there. You can still find it. It's buried in a cascade of submenus under About, I think. But here's why I think ego is here and why I think ego is such an asshole. We asked it to. Who's we? Not me. Surely not me, you must be thinking to yourself. I'm only 22 and still in college, or whatever your circumstances might be. I'm only 40, and there's no way that I'm responsible for ego being a problem in the human species for the entirety of history. The illusion of separation is that persistent. But let me tell you one of the most mind-blowing and very cool sort of open secrets about the world, which I assure you, you can verify for yourself. So don't get pissed at me for sounding like I'm trying to tell you what to believe in. I'm not. I'm telling you what I've experienced and how, as to how you can go experience it yourself. It's going to be nuanced. It's going to be your own path. Everyone's on their own path. That's how deep the illusion of separation goes. But guess what? The path that we're on, that is part of the illusion of separation, has two forks in the road. One keeps us separate, keeps us trapped in rabbit holes of ego traps, going down the vicious spiral and bouncing back up to the middle ground, and then, to confront that choice of, well, do I keep going down this ego path, or do I try the upward spiral of ascension? The virtuous upward spiral of ascension. We designed this for ourselves. And this can be something you can directly phenomenologically experience. There is only that which we call God. Everything that you perceive, everything that exists, from your own body self to the beverage you're drinking this morning or this afternoon or this evening, to the food you eat, to the other people you meet, anything that is alive or not, and mind you, everything in the universe is alive. Anything that is a natural, organic aspect of the universe is immediately, now, in the present moment, being made manifest by God. I've talked about this in previous episodes. Why am I repeating myself? Because even if we only have an intellectual understanding of it, which happens for many people first, before they have a deep physiological understanding of it, even if we achieve that, then we can start unchaining ourselves. And we can begin to put an end to this pointless battle between ideological constructs. Ideologies take us nowhere other than into conflict. Conflict is preferred by the system of oppression because it makes it easier to get away with organized murder all the time and organized food poisoning all the time. Okay, all argumentation is part of this. If you're busy arguing about whether or not it's better to be a vegetarian or a vegan or not, then you are adding to the problem instead of solving the problem. Right? You want to be a vegetarian? Be a vegetarian. There's nothing wrong with that. You want to eat meat? Eat meat. There's nothing morally wrong with that. Except that. Well, not except. The significance here is that both vegetarians and meat eaters generally, at large, seem to, based on my interactions with representatives of them out there in the world vis-a-vis social media, seem to both be equally blind to the fact that all life consumes life in order to be alive. It's not about what we eat. It's about how we raise it, how we love it, how we take care of it before we eat it. And trust me, a lot of people who eat meat would very quickly become vegetarians if they had to raise their own cow and butcher it. I'm in that list. And that sounds like a hypocrisy, right? But it's just that morally there's nothing wrong with consuming meat. Just like there's nothing... Hold on a second. We're almost out of time. We are now officially at 4 minutes and 20 seconds left. Bing! Right, so I'll wrap it up real quick. There's nothing morally wrong when a coyote eats your cat. You're just sad because you don't have that object that you're attached to. But there is nothing morally wrong with that coyote doing so. There's nothing morally wrong when a cougar eats a human. There's nothing morally wrong with the organic, natural act of humans eating meat. All life, including vegetable life, consume other life. And it's easy to say, oh, well, the only life that eats meat is fucking Venus flytraps, and that's an exception to the rule. Like, no. Seeds could not sprout in inert, nutritionless earth unless shit had died and molecularly deconstructed there on that earth to provide the boost of nutrition that seed needs to continue growing after it has consumed all the self-contained flesh of itself in the seed. Think about that. What is a seed? It is the singularity of origin surrounded by a lot of flesh, plant flesh, that the mother and the father plant provided for that singularity baby, that singularity of origin, to consume as it bursts open and begins the process. After that is all consumed, it needs to find nutrition in the ground. And guess where that nutrition comes from? That nutrition in the ground that all plants rely on came from previous generations of plant and animal life that died and rotted into the ground. If that stopped happening because of some moral imperative that plants... Can you imagine that if plants started arguing about how they should not eat meat that way, that they should not... what would they do? It's crazy. I digress, because I'm way off on this tangent. I probably offended a bunch of people too. Again, it's not about what we eat. It's about how we prepare it to be eaten. And I've got a deep personal story, which I'll have to save for another episode. It's the chicken story. And I'll save that for another time, because I've got 1 minute and 55 seconds left. Thank you for tuning in, my friends. Obviously, 45 minutes is not enough to go in depth about ego and how to fix it. But hopefully, this little bit of discussing it has facilitated your own curiosity. Be still and know, my friends. And for those of you listening who are like, but I need help meditating, I can't do it, I don't know how to shut my brain off. Fear not. I've addressed it in previous episodes, and I will address that again in future episodes. Thanks again for listening. I still have 42 seconds left, so I'm going to do a little self-promotion like I always do towards the end or at the beginning of the show, looking for people to have these conversations with, so that it's not just me rambling and asserting what I think is true, right? So we can really engage at that level. So if this interests you and you want to be a guest, a recurring contributor, or a formal co-host, hit me up. Scheduling, I know, can be chaos and it can be a lot of work, but you even if you make one appearance once, I would welcome that and applaud it and be grateful.